It's a fairly lengthy budget. Our financial officer, Ruth Ann Brookins, she'll be guiding us through it with what they've come up with. Luckily, council has had a couple of weeks to go over this budget before it was presented, say, if there's something we wanted to see put in or taken out or we didn't think was necessary. So we've had a chance to review it quite thoroughly over the last 2 weeks. So, but we'll probably walk through it and have a vote on it. Hopefully it'll pass and means we can start our 25-26 spending efforts.
Yeah, somebody's going to hear that and say, the mayor's in a hurry to spend our money.
Well, the mayor's not in a hurry to spend it, but there are things that we can't spend it until we get a budget passed. So, it sort of ties us up a bit. So it's nice to have it sealed down. So hopefully it'll pass tonight.
Now, can you tell us if the tax rate's going to stay the same, go up, go down?
No, we didn't touch the tax rate, but the assessments went up a bit. So that sort of gives us, it covers us on those inflationary items that the town itself has been hit with.
Now, there's two assessments to speak of. I mean, there's only one. It's a property assessment, I understand.
Right.
But if it's a new assessment, if there's a new house built, a new apartment, a new business, that's brand new that gets added to your assessment. That's a bonus and gives you more tax revenue to work with. But if it's a raised assessment, somebody's property value has gone up, then the bottom line for that person, it's still a tax increase.
Well, a bit, yes. Yeah. So, yes, there is but it's a rate, yeah, the cost of the tax is up, but we've kept the rate of assessment at the same. So, yeah, it's not a great thing. Now we've noticed a jump in value, in the assessed value of the town. But we found out belatedly, it's never happened, we found out the Department of Education, what we contribute to the Department of Education is based on that assessment rate. So a good chunk of what we saw in the increases is going to the Department of Education. So it really didn't benefit us that much.
No, and that's something you have no control over whatsoever. In fact, it's one of those where the province takes a look at your assessment, comes up with a fee, if you will, for operating the schools. And so the whole education budget is fixed by the province, and then they simply tell you what you have to pay them.
That's right. And I know the county got hit quite hard with what they had to pay for the Department of Education with this increase in assessment values. So anyway, yeah, we weren't aware of it. So it came as a shock. We were thinking, we might be a little ahead. We might, be able to, what we were counting on didn't arrive, I guess.
And what you were counting on really was based on all of the building activity that's been taking place, because that's brand new assessment added to your tax roll. And I could see we've talked often about how many new homes were going up and new construction was happening. And I could see that you'd be excited about that. But like you say, that also added to the bill. So big trade-off. Yeah. In
one hand and out the other kind of thing.
Exactly.
So, but houses are still moving quickly here. There's been, I think, 3 on my street alone here that have sold in the last month. So, it's still a growing concern. So it's good to see.
Now, I've raised this a couple of times with you, the idea of having, quote, secret meetings, in-camera meetings, and other councils I've been quite critical of over the years because they do it with great regularity, but I see it's on this agenda. And you've never really said anything in council that I can recall that would have alerted us to what you were discussing. Is this an ongoing big issue, or what's happening?
Well, with the new housing and whatnot, some of this stuff we're not allowed to discuss in public, as it's set out by the MGA. We can't discuss it until it's been discussed, and when we come out of in-camera, and a motion is made regarding whatever it was we were discussing. Say if we were going to sell a piece of land or somebody wanted to buy a piece of land. Well, we don't discuss that in open council. because if we wanted to buy a piece of land, because all of a sudden the value could jump up rather quickly. You know,
Yeah, you don't want to tip your hand if you're buying or selling anything, and you're also not allowed to talk about your salaries and your staff issues and so on in public. That makes perfect sense. And
the same for legal. Yeah, and if it's a legal issue, then we can't discuss that in open council until all of council has been informed on it, and then we can discuss it if we feel we should.
Now, I recall from when I was physically attending before Mark Rushton took over, but I recall you used to, on occasion, go into In-Camra, as it's called, toward the end of your meetings, and I would simply go outside or wander around somewhere, and a few minutes later, they'd come out and say, you can come back in again. And you would kind of reconvene the council meeting, present your motion, deal with it, and then we could all go home and say we've got the whole story. And a couple of those times, though, you come back and said, on item number blah, 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 all those in favor say aye. And there we were saying you passed a motion, but we don't know what it was. Is that still your practice?
No. I think we've tried to make it much clearer for the record as to what exactly we're doing.
Good for you.
You've got to have transparency. We try not to hide anything, but like I say, if it's illegal, then our hands are tied in some cases. But when it comes to passing motions, we discovered that some of the motions we were passing, we weren't following the right protocols. Call for someone makes a motion, it's seconded, and you call for questions and debate.
Yeah.
And then you have your vote.
But the point I was making is that you had your debate and your questions in the in-camera meeting, and so when you came back, you didn't revisit that. You simply made the motion and it left everybody hanging, saying, "I wonder what that was about."
Well, we'll try to make the motions more clear. But yes, there is. I see what you're pointing at. Yes, the discussion's already been had in camera, so it's not repeated if it comes out for a motion.
You got it. Now, I say that knowing full well that there are some councils that do try to hide that information. They do try to hide what went on. And when you say you can't do it all in secret, you can't hide it, in the end, you can't hide it at all. Now, you may not have he said we should pay $10,000 and we offered $11,000, and that kind of, you don't get into that detail perhaps, but you can't hide what council does. It's public business.
That's right. That's right. So, yes, it is a public business, and there has to be a public record of it as well.
Now, speaking of that, another topic along that line, in talking recently with the Premier and the Minister of Natural Resources about some new efforts in terms of trying to make it understandable in what they can call now plain English, the kinds of legislation that they're putting together. And it used to be that, these rules and regulations and laws and bylaws and legislation were written by lawyers, and they speak a whole different language than the rest of us. And this idea of moving to plain language so that we can all understand, I think is a great idea. And I look at your accessibility report, and it's 16 pages long. I think that could have been one page. Really do. Could have been a simple one, but and that's where councils get the bad rap, because people say it's all such gobbledygook, and you could tell me in one line, but it takes you a week to get it out.
Well, there's a problem right there. Sometimes you have to over-explain things or over-clarify them, just so there's absolutely no room for confusion. You don't want to leave it open to interpretation. You want it clearly defined as to what the goal is. What are you hoping to achieve with this? So sometimes you have to be a little verbose, I guess, to make sure everything's covered.
Now, we'll change topics again and go to the community events kind of thing. And I want to thank you personally for your introduction to Marion, your MPAL, your municipal physical activity leader, and I'm looking forward to working with her in terms of getting information that we can help you promote the events in Oxford. And we've had a kind of roller coaster ride where we had all kinds of Oxford events, and then we'd have none at all for weeks, months at a time, and we could never seem to get a good handle on it. And, and maybe just through Marion we'll at least get the things that the town is doing. But there are other activities taking place that people are quite content to just kind of pin it up on the bulletin board in Oxford and expect the whole county's going to know about it. But it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And there's a couple taking place this weekend. There's one at the Trinity United Church. It's a cornerstone of the downtown Oxford, I guess. It's right there on Main Street. It's celebrating its 100th anniversary. So they're having a function there on Sunday night, June 1st at 7 p.m. All are welcome. And they've got there's some singers and music and whatnot taking place. Also, we've got a Grow More workshop, which is being put on by Megan Baker. And that's free, open to everyone. And that's taking place at the Fire Hall on June 5th at 6:30. So it's a... if you want to get that little garden going, Megan will be there to give you tips on what to plant next to what and when to put it in and when to harvest and when not to touch it. So I could probably use some of that information myself.
I was just going to say that's something I'm interested in because I've been wanting to put in a garden for years and years and years. I've made 2 attempts at it over the years, failed miserably because I didn't know what I was doing at all. And I keep starting off with too big for one thing. So I would certainly benefit by that. I didn't know about that one as a good example. Yep. I mean, if you want to keep it just Oxford, just within the confines of the town boundaries, you're going about it the right way. But if you really do want to open it up to some people of interest, then, we're happy to help. And we do all that for free.
Yep. So anyway, well, like I say, you're invited to that. That's June 5th at 6:30 at the Fire Hall. So, I don't know if you're supposed to bring your rubber boots or not.
Rake and shovel, please. Rake and shovel.
Rake and shovel, yeah. So, like I say, I've been working on putting in a garden now for the last couple of years. I just make it a little bigger each time, and it's always nice to go out and just pick something fresh for your supper.
What do you grow? I'm going to start out eventually one of these years, and I'm hoping still this year. But what do you start with? What are the basics in the Henley garden?
Well, in my garden, I've got 2 types of potatoes. Even though they're dirt cheap in the fall, it's just nice to go out and get them just fresh out of the garden. Carrots, beans, peas, and I've got a small blue strawberry patch coming along quite nicely. It's full of blooms. And don't have my tomatoes in yet. Got to have my tomatoes. And I do have some herbs, basil, chives, a few other things, and some rosemary. So, and what else? Some thyme. Now just some herbs and spices as well.
And you mentioned you put in potatoes and they're dirt cheap, no pun intended, in the fall. And I always thought, what's the wisdom of that? They're so cheap. But one of the things you mentioned is you can get those potatoes when they're new and fresh, and there's nothing like it in the store. And tomatoes, right. I love tomatoes like you. But today's tomatoes have no taste. And I wonder, I hear stories about getting the classic seeds or the ancient seeds, and that you can get back to the real tomatoes. Is that something you do?
Well, yeah, I try to buy the older varieties that have been kicking around for a few 100 years. The ones where you go to cut it with a knife and it will explode if your knife isn't sharp. Not the one that you can slice like cardboard. I don't want those. I want real tomatoes with flavor.
And I like those big beefsteak jobbies. One slice makes a sandwich.
That's right, but it's got to be able to fall apart. I don't like them toughened up like cardboard, so you can ship them halfway around the world and they'll still show up in good shape.
But you must be eating them on a plate. I mean, if I make a sandwich with one of those, it'll be all running down my arm.
Well, you just got to be careful.